Wednesday, April 29th, 2026. Welcome back to the Global Financial Reset, Surviving and Thriving the Transition. We are live, and thank you for being here. Joining me today in just a moment is Brad Wozni and Larry Ballard. So we've got top-tier guests. We're going to go all around the map on things relating to the economy, the political events that affect it as well. So again, joining me is Brad Wozni and Larry Ballard. For those of us struggling to get by with little or no financial assets to protect, most of America at that point, the education that is provided each week in this show benefits each and every one of us. It's not just about protecting the assets, although it is for those that have assets to protect, but it's also about the structures that are changing in this reset that will affect everyone, and in a very positive way as time moves forward. So please continue to follow us each and every week. This show is for all. Where we go one, we go all. Chaos without clarity. Problems without solutions. Steer clear from disruptive fear porn podcasters. Use discernment and do choose wisely. Quick announcement: Juan O'Savin and Chief of Staff, retired Lieutenant Colonel Matt Mack, are hosting the Fraud Fighter Summit. Mark your calendars. You see the shot here. You can screenshot it later. Fraud Fighter Summit. Visit fraudfightersummit.us. June 15th through 17th in Las Vegas. You see it up on the screen. They will be discussing, among other things, the incredible, deeply extensive bond fraud that includes mortgage-backed securities and many other things, municipals and so forth. Bond fraud, government waste, corruption, election fraud, healthcare scams, and much more. So this will be probably sold out very, very quickly. Get the details at fraudfightersummit.us and meet 107. He's got a panel of folks there. You'll look into it when you get to the website. I wanted to get that announcement out there to everybody in the states that can attend. All right. Also, another quick announcement. Everyone can join us from anywhere in the world. Tomorrow, this is April 30th, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. This is our monthly live Patriot Power Hour Q&A, where for one solid hour, in this case, this month, Captain Rob Cunningham will answer your questions in our private Zoom room live. I will be there as your host. You want to participate in this? If you're not already a premium member, you go to jmcbroadcasting.com, click on Premium Member, and learn about it. And if it's for you, come join us. January, when we kicked it off, we had Will Barney. February, Michael Jaco. March, Derek Johnson. This month, Captain Rob Cunningham. And May 28th, Juan O'Savin. So each month we bring in a power guest to answer your questions straight up. So, and of course, everything we produce aside of the premium portal is free to the public. We have a free subscription, jmcbroadcasting.com. Now, saving America and protecting your wealth are not spectator sports. It requires effort and due diligence, then action on your behalf. Action changes things. So it's time. Visit Amazon.com and pick up a copy of my relatively recently published book, Global Financial Reset. Amazon.com. I believe it is 5-star rated. It's a quick read, folks. It's really a manual based on the contents of what we deliver each and every week in this show, and based on the contents of wealthcoachuniversity.com, a site I put together to help us get out of the system during what I call the danger zone while we're resetting systems multiple. This is big. And there are some dangers, and that's why Juan is also holding that Freedom Fighter Summit to expose the problems that are coming in the bond arena. So anyway, pick up a copy of the book if it's of interest to you. It is morning here. I'm in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and we've got a very good show here. Brad Wozni is the host of Sovereign Soul Show, guided by the Creed, Love, Levity, and Liberty. A Canadian military veteran, a retired firefighter. Brad served as Canadian infantry soldier and hell attack wildfire firefighter. Prior to 2020, Brad spent years working in Hollywood as a twice-option filmmaker and has also been a Reiki master for over a decade. His diverse background blends service, creativity, and spiritual exploration. Since launching his podcast, now nearing 1,000 episodes in 4 years, Brad has hosted conversations spanning ancient history, current events, and emerging quantum concepts, offering alternative perspectives on global and cultural issues. Also joining, and by the way, I'm sure many of our viewers follow Brad, and we'll talk about his platform a little bit later. Also joining us is Larry Ballard. He's an author who believes that God enables those that he calls. In 1968, he experienced a near-death event during which he was warned of a time when freedom would be in peril, a time he believes is right here, right now. In preparation for delivering what he views as his God-ordained message, Larry studied history and religion as foundations for understanding world events. He also gained firsthand professional experience across multiple industries, including construction, nuclear energy, real estate, bioengineering, and the medical field. His travels throughout the United States and internationally, including Mexico, Canada, Europe, and China, have shaped his perspectives on major global developments such as events of 9/11, international trade policy, border policy, the 2008 financial crisis, and according to Juan, we're about to head into a bond collapse that'll make that look like a picnic in the park. We'll get into that later, and we'll unpack action and solutions as well. Larry's versed in universal healthcare and climate-related narratives. Larry believes these experiences have provided insight into broader financial and geopolitical forces shaping the modern world, including what he describes as efforts to trigger global financial instability. He also believes America will play a central role in restoring order and ushering in a period of peace, prosperity, and spiritual awakening, also perhaps known as the Golden Age. His message is one of faith, resilience, and ultimate victory, that good prevails and that hope remains for the future. Larry came to me on an introduction from our good friend Juan O'Savin. Both Brad Wasney and Larry Ballard are important voices of our times and have each been featured, of course, separately in Conversations of Consequence. That's a very special broadcast I do monthly. So if you want to learn more about these two guests, please visit Conversations of Consequence at jmcbroadcasting.com or on our Rumble channel. Let's bring our esteemed guests on the show. And thank you, gentlemen, very much for being here. Let's make sure we got sound on Brad. Hello, Brad. How are you, sir?
John, it's an honor. Thank you very much. And Larry, it's an honor as well. Thank you very much for your service too, in the truth and the light.
Thank you. Larry, I just want to make sure our sounds are in. Say hello.
I'm here. And Brad, I'm really
Great.
looking forward to finding out more about you and visiting your show. It sounds very, very interesting to me.
Mahalo.
Excellent. Well, this is the place where patriots meet, and we're going to talk about King Charles. King Charles visiting the White House, which is pretty much not a common occurrence. I don't have the stats and facts in front of me, but I think you go as far back as Nixon. I mean, it's been decades since a king, as far as I understand, has sat down with a president and come over to our territory in the White House. And this one, of course, was one for the history books. Again, not a common occurrence. So we'll begin with Brad. What if you've picked up the news on it? It's so fresh and current. Quite frankly, I haven't watched really any of it, just some of the drive-by data because I've been so busy. But I get the gist of it. I'd like to know what your view is. What is the messaging that's being sent here that King Charles has come and sat down here and spoken before us in the White House and in the chamber? What do you make of this?
Well, John, I think it's probably one of the most important optics of the last 10 years in this entire battle with the White Hat Alliance, where you're literally seeing the figurehead of the deep state in the world, beyond the Pope at the Vatican, right? Figurehead. Charles, Elizabeth, no more, of course, as we know, coming down, breaking bread, and we have the comms, which were done even in the nice new garden that Melania, beautiful she looked with the Princess Diana dresses over the course of the ceremonies through the first day alone, just sending a message out to people, hey, they're under our thumb now. They're under our control. And once again, we can just go back to even last year in the fall when you had Trump, Melania, and even some of the Trumps, the kids, over there at Windsor Castle, and you're playing the American anthem and you're flying the American flag over Windsor Castle. And that's not the real family name, are the Windsors. And we've probably covered that umpteen times over and over again on different the war shows that we do and other ones Derek and I have done for years where we go all weekly and sitting here going, it's over. At a high level, the Commonwealth is done. And the city of London, anybody who's left there is in deep panic, if there is anybody left there and they're not under white hat control. It's beautiful.
Yes, thank you. There were, I did catch a few drive-by images and so forth, and indications from patriots on social media. There's a stack of anomalies to really chew on of some of the optics that took place, like the 11 candelabras, 11 on each one, 11, right? There was a photograph with the Queen, the King, and our president and our First Lady, and they all had their hands by their side. The King's hands were behind his back. I found that rather symbolic. But there's quite a bit of messaging going on, and I do want to say this just to poke some fun at it. Where's the No Kings million people showing up?
Right.
They didn't show up to this event where the king was there. The No Kings decided to stand up and applaud the Kings. Anyway, thank you, Brad, for weighing in. Larry, any comments about what you may have seen or witnessed or know of the very recent visit here now?
Well, what Brad said was well put. I can't refrain from going back in history because that's kind of my wheelhouse. You mentioned something that takes us back to our first tell that they capitulated, and that's Derek Johnson and what he did with the capitulation tour, where I remember those pictures where basically Trump, a 6 foot whatever, is walking with the Queen and she's behind him. And then I remember when he goes up to one of her royal guards and talks to them and stands and his back is to her, and they have quite a lengthy conversation. So there's all that coming back from years ago. And then now we're getting the tells, of course, with the clothes and with what happened in the last day or so. But if we go back a few weeks back, I think that some things that are very significant happened. And we go back to the Bible, there's things that tell us what was going to happen. So let's start there. So let's go back as far as we can. And if you read the book of Revelation, it talks about the combination beast. And in that combination beast, Daniel was told when he wrote his stuff, hey, put it aside. People aren't going to know what it is. They're not going to know what it is. But now we can decipher what those beasts are. And the one in the very front is a lion. And if you go to England and you look at their coat of arms, it's a lion. Everything is a lion. And what is the lion in this combination beast? It's the mouthpiece. And what is the language of England? It's English. And what did the UN declare years ago? It declared that the language of the world was what? English. And if we go back further in the Bible, we go to the Tower of Babel, and God said, if these people have a common language, there is nothing they cannot do. So we've got footprints going back thousands of years leading to it. Then I'm looking at what's been happening in the Iraq War in the last few weeks, and boy, do I see some tells there. We have our alma mater out there, or whatever you want to call it, and Trump says, hey, England, we'd like you to send a couple of carriers over. And they say, well, not our war, right? Not our war. And let's go back even further. And we've got the Strait of Hormuz, and it's kind of blocked, right? Well, why? Oh, because there was a chess move made by England. And what did they say? Lloyd's of London is not going to insure any of those ships, effectively closing the strait, effectively opposing what Donald Trump wanted to have done. And then Donald Trump gets it all done, and in his arrogant, sarcastic way, or bombastic, or whatever you want to say, he says to the people in Europe, which is all the combination of the beast, you've got in that European Union, you've got the mouthpiece, which is the lion, you've got Germany, which is a four-headed beast, and you can tell that because it tells you in the Bible, every time a nation falls, its leader falls or its nation falls, it gets a new head. And in 1989, we had the birth of the Fourth Reich, not the Third Reich. And then Russia is the bear with the mouthpiece. And then we've got the Catholic Church, which is the Vatican. And we've got, of course, we've got the beast. And that's basically the global financial elite that's right there in your Bible. So here's what happened. And then I'm basically done with this. The last thing was Trump, when they finally said, okay, we'll send you a couple of carriers. He says, never mind, we don't need them. So he's outed them. They've outed themselves by what they did, because the whole world, anybody who pays any attention and who knows anything about Iran understands this. They understand that we've been at war with Iran for 1,400 years. We would win for a while, the Christians, and then they would win. But when they won, here's what happened. Those nations were put into suppression, and the people either submitted or had their heads cut off, or if they agreed to live there and pay homage to Islam, then they had to pay a tax, and they had to wear a necklace that showed they paid the tax, or they had to wear a gold star, which became very famous when it was adopted and put on the breast of the people in Germany who were the Jews. So basically, that's our history, and it's all there. And I just want to close by saying, for anybody who really follows history, you know that England is the powerhouse of the world. They never fell. They never lost control. They control the World Bank, the IMS, and all of the financial system. And those who control money control the world, but they're losing their grip completely.
Absolutely. Thank you for all that. And I'm glad you mentioned, because it's not a coincidence that the King Charles shows up now at the stage of our operation in the Straits of Hormuz concerning London, oil, money, China, and so forth. Brad, could you care to weigh in on that? When Brad has frequented our Global Defense War Military panel, where we jump into these issues in far greater detail. Today, we're talking in this broadcast how things relate financially. But Larry opened it up. So why don't you continue down that trajectory? You know, we had the In and Out mission in Venezuela, which was huge on multiple fronts. Also the oil. We have Iran. We understand what's going on there. China is now affected by this. Russia and London's been exposed and being decapitated, and the king shows up at the White House. So, what's your elaboration on the plan? This brilliant military operation that's changing how the world functions. That's what's happening. Take it away, Brad.
Well, it's going along swimmingly, in my opinion. And I first want to just acknowledge, Larry, what you've done is provided incredible context, both historically and for people and how it relates to them now. And I think that's where we're just taking this. How can you have a conversation at your kitchen table with your kids who are, preteens, maybe 14, 15 to, and that's what I consider a preteen, right? You're getting ready to drive. You got to look ahead. Maybe you're going to go to college. Maybe you're not too sure about what you do for the rest of your life. But how are these events right now going to shape your decisions over the next 4, 5, 6 years of your family? So this is kind of where the stance I'm going to take it from on this show, John, just so your audience knows. And thank you to your audience, by the way, for absolutely crushing it and sharing out your shows here. This content is absolutely prime. And what John has provided here, along with the team behind the scenes, is something that you're not even going to get from the CNN, MSNBCs of the world whatsoever. I mean, you're driving views at a level on your platform that encompass more than they could pull together. So you're probably getting it straight from the horse's mouth on every one of John's guests. So from a contextual standpoint, there's this famous quote that says, if you control the oil, you control the governments of the world. And if you control the money and the food, then you control the people of the world. So when you have it from an oil supply and you have it from the Rockefeller standpoint, that the Rockefellers went in with Standard Oil, they basically, like robber barons, murdered all their competition, bought out the competition, whatever they could, to consolidate it with that octopi type tentacles, that famous graphic before the Federal Reserve was brought around 1913 Act. Federal Reserve, IRS, ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. All of these are being outed right now, whether it's the Southern Poverty Law Center, all the way. This all leads up to the Financial Freedom, the NASARA in the United States, and the Global Economic Security and Reformation Act, which is important from a galactic federation standpoint that leads us back to a type 1 civilization on Earth so that we can all enjoy the fruits of the free energy, the ionic energy, and the travel that has been suppressed from us to keep us in an enslavement mindset, which is these aircraft that we're getting on, we have to wait long lineups, and they burn a lot of fuel. And if you want to buy a ticket right now from Canada and go over to Europe, you have to pay a carbon tax. Well, it's only 0.06% of the emissions carbon in the world, and you are the carbon that they want to end. So from a financial standpoint, if they can enslave you with the oil, and then they have the tax enslavement on your straw man from the birth certificate system. Remember, for all the Canadians, you have a social insurance number, an SIN, a SIN, registered at Vital Statistics Canada in Thunder Bay, Ontario, or over in British Columbia, BC. But they then register you in Washington, D.C. under the Crown Corporation of Canada, headquartered on Pennsylvania Avenue at the Canadian Embassy, just like they've been doing for all the Australians and anybody else in the Commonwealth country that is registered in Washington, D.C., which is a subsidiary country, is corporation, not a sovereign nation, a corporation underneath USA Inc., which was established in 1871, which then kicks you over to the City of London for control. Your birth certificate and all of the background history of your family go to the Vatican Bank, and the Vatican has you, and you're traded through the BIS with that social insurance number or social security number in America, and your birth certificate registered number at the BIS on Swift, openly on the stock market, called chattel, corporate chattel. So when I started the Sovereign Soul Show 4 years ago, people were like, many people were blown away that this would ever happen. More conspiracy theories, like I've been calling out mask jabs and all these other things. And guess what? Thanks to the people doing their own research, and I say this to all the men and women with families right now, do not use ChatGPT for what we're covering tonight. Do not use Grok for what we're covering tonight. Because if you go to look for what is the QSIP number, CUSIP, Charlie, Uniform, Sierra, India, Papa, what is your QSIP number? How many hundreds of millions to billions of dollars are you worth? You will be told that that is conspiracy by ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, whatnot. But you could use a Brave browser and you can find out what that is, and you can go get your straw man. So you are breaking down the tax enslavement for America first. And that's when all the rest of the world, whether it's Canada, Australia, New Zealand, they start seeing the amount of money that's coming back to them, the revaluation, which now gets to happen because the Strait of Hormuz is open. The new agreement that's been made with the Strait of Malacca with the Indonesians that Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, on Monday, while everybody's looking over here with the King and Queen's visit and what's going on with President Trump and Melania, signs an unfettered agreement for access over the airwaves for the United States military to fly at any point in time over Indonesia, which is just kitty corner to where John is right now on this live program. And guess what? The Strait of Malacca is the number one most trafficked strait and contested strait in the world. And guess who's got the oil tankers who are buying the oil from America right now? Even China. So you want to talk about a global power shift and the dynamics and the freedom that is coming for you to no longer pay income taxes because you have never been required unless you're a resident of Washington, D.C., or a member of the federal government. You can look at the 16th Amendment. If everybody's still worried about that, the IRS, you can look at IRS subsection 601.602 code. You can see the fact that you're not contracted whatsoever as a sovereign man or woman, and it's all voluntary. And they even put that out there in multiple court cases that have been won in courts. But people still live in a fear. And if anybody wants to go to Scripture for a moment, I'll turn it back to John and Larry here. You look at Scripture and the word, do not fear, and thou shalt not fear, is what you see throughout the Bible. Not do be in fear, not live in fear, but you see the word love on a show that I just wrapped up before this live stream. In the 73 canonical books in the Roman Catholic Church itself, the word love appears 489 times in the 1899 RA version. I don't know what that really stands for because I wasn't born then in this lifetime. However, under the new Bible in every United States church, it's 580 times the word love. Love thy friend, love thy neighbor, send your enemies love, walk in love. So if you are an expression of love, then you need to unleash that sovereignty. And everybody's looking at it from a financial picture. Just go back and look at what gold, silver, and precious metals have meant to be. We talk about Iran, we talk about the 5th century Babylonian towers that fell. Where was that? Well, it wasn't in Iran, but we had Cyrus the Great in the 5th century who led it, pushed it over, and this is the Trump of our time, then taking over the towers of Babylon in the city of London and Vatican with what they just did last week, showing themselves. So, the Emperor Has No Clothes, I think would be a great apt title for this show tonight, John, or maybe even a subtitle, because that's exactly what we just saw over these last 2 days with King Charles and the King Bee, President Trump himself, being the commander in chief and
Thank you.
supreme leader of the world.
Thank you. You've unpacked quite a bit there. I want to pedal back to one quick thing. The birth certificate, if Grok goes against that, I say Grok schmock, forget about it, because we've done the homework, and that is a very real subject. And so have you, Brad. I had retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox on here, and I also brought in some additional evidence and information about the birth certificate issue, that we've been traded as a commodity with the capital letters and so forth and so on. And that dovetails into repatriation of wealth, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But, you unpacked a lot of big truths there, big pieces of what has been and what is almost no longer, or in the process of being no longer. Why don't we flip this level of dialogue over to Larry? Anything that sitting on the tip of your tongue, Larry, you'd like to share with us right now?
I'm going to comment on two of the things Brad said. We'll go to the Bible first. So basically, what was Christ asked? What's the most important scripture in the Bible? To love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul. The second is unto it to love thy neighbor. And so I know you're coming from a spiritual background. So here's what I've concluded in my life. Basically, if we would just as a civilization learn to harm another is to harm ourselves, we'll have peace and prosperity in this world. And then you were talking about the corporation. I'm going to try to take it. You already set that stage beautifully. So now I'm going to go into current times, things that are happening right now, to tie that back to what you said, so we can see both sides of that coin. So I am an unapologetic supporter of Donald Trump. And you're not going to ever stop me from doing that. I believe the man is a genius, and he's got the plan down. So there's a lot of people out there that are coming against him and saying he's going to ruin the world economy. We're going to shut off the oil. Well, you just talked about the Strait of Malacca. It's the exact opposite is happening. The oil is considered to be strategic, and we're going to get control of it. The same thing is going to happen in the Strait of Hormuz. He turned down the latest proposal from Iran that says, nope, we're not budging. You're going to get rid of your ability to have a bomb. And he said, you're not going to control the strait. So he's coming in, and not like any other president, he draws a red line. And this is to finally bring peace to the Middle East. All of the nations in the Middle East want peace. They've had nothing but war their entire life, and so all of them are aligned against Iran. And so it's just a foregone conclusion. So now I want to shift it to the economic piece of it. So we go back and when did this war start? Did it start a few weeks ago? No, it started months ago. It started in the planning and the genius of what Donald Trump did. So what was his first play that I could see even then was relating to what was going to happen? He went to Venezuela. Venezuela was a linchpin to this whole thing. So what happened is he went in there and he took Maduro out alive. And now what that gives us is, it gives us a man who's spilling his guts. And we're going to find out that the elections in this country and 71 other countries have been stolen. And what does that do? When I died in 68, God said the time will come when the truth will come out and it will open people's eyes. And so now I want to jump back to something you said, Brad, and that is, we are getting more freedom on the internet than we have. I'm now on YouTube, and I'm not been taken off. But the next mechanism that's going to control us and our freedom of speech is AI. So you need to be careful about AI. But now let's go back to the genius of what Trump did. You didn't see Russia come into this war. You didn't see Japan have a hissy fit. You didn't see China come in. So let's take a step back and look at the role of China. So we think of China as being our greatest enemy. No, we have to realize they're puppeted by England. They're puppeted by the Vatican, and to a degree, they're puppeted by Washington, D.C. Well, I want to go back in time into when Carter was in office, and geopolitically, the world made a change that a lot of people didn't even recognize. What the global financial elite said is America's getting too strong. Yes, they're the world superpower and they can be our Navy, but they're getting too strong. So under Carter, there was a conscious decision made to create a super capitalist communist economy so that it had the innovation of America and the global control coming out of England to puppet the world. And so now you said something earlier, Brad, about money. And a lot of people say he who controls money controls the world. Well, I take it a little deeper, and you were headed in that direction. Where does the money come from? The money comes from, first of all, having natural resources. So Trump is going all over the world, getting deals for all kinds of natural resources. So when the time comes, that $18 trillion that's been committed to us to build those factories will be actually spent to build those factories. And what cinches that? It cinches that with what happened with the tariffs, where now what's happening with the tariffs, they're codified. They're no longer waiting on this president to be killed or leave office, and they say, it's just an executive order. We can go back to what we were doing, business as usual. No, we have the legislation that says the United States of America has a pathway to do what Trump's been saying, to do what? Get out from under the cartels, get out from under England and the global financial elite, and go from Internal Revenue Service, that means the IRS, to External Revenue Service, which means that in the future, we're going to have the pathway to go back to when America was founded. And we ran this whole nation and built all the infrastructure that made it the greatest nation in the world based upon what? Based on a simple sales tax. So now I say, where's the money come from? We developed Continental Railroad, so we had access to the natural resources. Trump's going all over the world. Then Trump is basically rebuilding our manufacturing. We were the ones who developed the Industrial Revolution, and that made America the greatest nation in the world in a short span of 34 years. We're on our centennial anniversary. We announced America, the youngest nation in the world, is now the wealthiest. What I'm building is Trump is not guessing. Trump is playing on something that probably 1,000 people listening know what it is. And it's the American economic system, the system that made America the greatest nation in the world. And Trump is just basically reintroducing it. That's why you need to know history. So what's happening basically is we're getting control of the natural resources, control of manufacturing. We're getting 5,915 patents that we can use to have a technological revolution that will absolutely just change everything in the world. And what Trump is doing is coming out against the Green New Deal, against the carbon taxes that you were talking about. And he's saying, the Green New Deal is just nothing. It's absolutely nothing but a mechanism to drive us. And so what we're going to get is we're going to get some of those patents, and we're going to find out that we literally can have clean, virtually free energy. And when that happens, I want to take you through a scenario of what that means to your pocketbook. So we're out from under the Fed. So look at how much money that puts in your pocket. And then I'm going to give you a logistics example of what it means if we get free energy. Let's take an automobile. That automobile was birthed in a strip mine. And when one crane comes down and picks up 10 tons of ore, drops it into a truck that both run on diesel, goes to a smelt, run on coal, goes to a flotilla of boats that send it all over the world. And basically, by the time you're done, the cost of everything you've ever bought or ever will buy was 50, 60, 70% based on energy. That's all going to come. And so now back to the central issue, and I'm going to turn it back over. What Trump has done is he understands that he who controls money controls the world. But the key to that is controlling energy, because I went today and it was $3.85 for gas at my gas station locally here. And basically when those prices go up, it means they control all the necessities of life, because people get into a situation where they can't afford a house, they can't afford groceries, they can't afford medicine, whatever. So what's Trump done? The genius of this act that he's done is he took Venezuela's oil, so that now America produces more oil than anybody else in the world. And he then leveraged it. He said to Russia, you know what? You can sell oil to anybody you want, because we don't want to shut off all these other nations and cause them to put pressure on me to end this war. And then he saw to it that China didn't come in, because he allowed them to have oil. And so now he's controlling the entire situation. And here's the long game that he's playing. He's taking us back in history, and he's doing just what they did in ancient times. He's actually committing a siege against Iran. And they made the mistake that they should have learned from history. You never want to be a nation that has all your wealth tied up in into one thing, into gas and oil. And when that is shut off, and it is shut off now, what happens is the nation starts to starve to death. They're not even able to fill their own tanks because we've got the principal refineries shut down. The grocery stores are becoming vacant. And guess what happens? You've got the radicals that are controlling the government, but under them, you've got the army, the IRCG, just the boots on the ground. They're not getting paid. How long do you think it's going to be before they desert? They're already beginning to desert, and the people hate them. So I see the end of this war coming in this way. It's an economic move that's going to end this war. Not more bombing, not more. It's just basically bleed them to death. Just exactly what he's doing in Cuba. So this whole strategy goes back and understands history and understands logistics. It understands everything that is responsible for controlling the economic systems of the world. Trump is a genius. Back to you.
Well said. Trump is a genius. Makes sense in my book. Also, the anointed one, who we put in office all 3 times. And thank goodness for that. 45 dash. Thank you, Derek Johnson. 47. Couple of pedal backs before I have Brad weigh in. 107 has stated, I don't have the quote in front of me, so I'll paraphrase it. With all we've been through and what lies ahead, the financial arena is really going to be the biggest issue of concern, to your point a moment ago, Larry. Also, energy, the themes thus far surrounded by the military actions we've taken and the conversations we've had, all is surrounding the subject of money, but energy, right? Natural resources and energy that you've both touched on. And it's probably not a coincidence that Q, the greatest open source military intelligence operation of our time, was born and raised and housed out of the Department of Energy. Kind of interesting there. And one last thing that hit me when you were speaking is Ron often quotes this, but he's quoting Reagan. And Reagan said, "The business of America is business." And that's exactly what Trump is taking care of, all the big issues that you gentlemen just raised, so that we can get back to the business of business. And it's going to be phenomenal. Right now, I know a lot of people are commenting on the chat fields going, I can't pay my bills. When are we getting the refunds? And what about the money and all that stuff? And we're going to get there in a few moments, folks. But laying the groundwork from historical, political, and biblical sense is the best place to start. And I'm glad you gentlemen took us there. Brad, do you have any follow-up on that before I take us into slightly new territory?
Go ahead with the great new territory. Larry just covered it
Okay.
succinctly, and all I would be doing would be spitballing what Larry's already saying. Your audience is intelligent, and I just want to echo that. Yeah, President Trump is a freaking genius, as well as the incredible white hats and the team behind him, and the Q movement is powerful.
Yes. Yeah. This is, as we know, and I know our audience knows, this has been many years in the making, very precise military intelligence operation. The things we see unfolding today were thought out many years ago, and that's why we were able to get in and out of Venezuela in the snap of a finger, and change the whole world in the process of right now in the Straits of Hormuz. Let's switch gears. Let's go a little granular into a subject called money. How could you best, Brad, connect the dots? Yeah, money. What is money, right? Well, money for us has been debt, and there hasn't been any money since 1913. But how can you best connect the dots for our viewers as to what is, and they're very well educated. We've had folks like yourself and many great guests here, but I always like to take it a different angle, a little deeper each time. So we'll start with Brad. How could you best connect the dots for our viewers as to what is happening in this global financial reset? And I call it a GFR. A lot of folks say you should call it the global currency reset. Yes, true. We are having a global currency reset, but that's a microcosm of the global financial reset, because we're resetting the entire financial systems on the planet. Banks, SWIFT, how money moves, QFS, what is money, and everything else. So I want to micro into money from the viewpoint of global financial reset. What are we resetting? when it comes to money? What unpack all of that, because there's a lot there. Take it away, Brad.
Well, to simplify it, it is a return to sound money. And when you look at that and people ask question, what is sound money? Then you need something that has a storage of value, which has stood the test of time. It's went against stock markets, it's went against, and it's exchanged across sovereign nations and countries. And there's a distinct difference between both of them. But when somebody can agree in one country or in one place on earth in one office that this ounce of gold or this ounce of silver, platinum, or palladium is this, and then you have that similar storage of value agreeable upon another nation or a country or a business entrepreneur or an individual in their house, then what you have now is an equal footing and a playing ground on the global stage. So from a global finance reset you're seeing, no longer can you have a printing press which simply you put toilet paper in one side and it spits out some colored ink paper with some Illuminati symbols on it and hidden messages and folded dollar bills about 9/11 buildings and towers being collapsed with demonic imprints. Because you have gold that comes out of the ground, silver that comes out of the ground, and by the way, where does this go to? It's God's money. So that, very simply put, everything else can get extremely complex. What's the derivatives here, the bond market, etc., your strawman account, your BIS, and whatever. Bottom line, the world is waking up to sound money, and the theft of that money, especially for America, which is well documented everywhere, was the theft of America's gold in 1933, where they repriced it and gave themselves a pay raise in 1934. And this has been beaten almost like a dead horse right now. But for anybody listening for the first time, very brief synopsis is this. In 1933, America was really going off the gold standard because you had Roosevelt in there who was supplanted and sat there and went, you know what, with the barrel of a gun, with the threat of $10,000 fine, this is in the dirty 30s era, you must turn in by executive order all of the gold and any precious metals your family has at the nearest Federal Reserve. You all can look this up. Even Grok admits this one, by the way. I tested this 3 months ago. You all have to turn it into the nearest Federal Reserve bank in exchange for US Federal Reserve notes. And we guarantee a payment of $24.50 on every ounce of gold. And then 10 months later, they gave it all a pay raise. And the American Treasury said, well, gold is now set to here in 1934 at $32.50 value, which then since 1944, or excuse me, 1938, I believe, is sitting at $44, still as a statute today, which is probably why J.D. Vance came out and said, we're going to have to look at price floor on silver and other precious metals, right? Well, they stole the money. They took the greenbacks from everybody that did not want it. They brought in a social security system and they signed you up to it and they made sure that you were taxing it. All right, so I'm giving it the very layman's terms here now. So everybody who is in a country, not a sovereign nation, a country that does not allow you to profit from the business of that nation, you are in tax enslavement, you're worrying about your bills, and you do not likely have gold, silver, or precious metals whatsoever, which has stood the test of time from a valuation standpoint, right? Now from that, you look at the derivatives, the bonds market, and the collapse that's coming from there. Everything else is all just vaporware, zeros, ones, and it's financial instruments because we all agree to that. And yeah, I went to honors economics at Wilfrid Laurier University, the indoctrination university in Canada. I think most of them all are right now at this point in time, John, for your audience standpoint. We have to unwind all the Marxism, communism, Satanism, Luciferianism very quickly for our next generation to come up and the generations after that to follow in their footsteps for sovereignty. But they did not teach this there. By very important fact that if you steal the wealth of the country and you make the citizens pay for it, which is a very large premise to President of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele's speech at CPAC in 2024, February, told everybody how it works. The Federal Reserve Bank is owned by families. It's a for-profit corporation. It's a banking cartel enemy. And speaking of cartels and enemies, you see that OPEC and Saudi Arabia just said, yeah, we're going to withdraw very shortly from the OPEC oil cartel and price fixing schemes. So it's really prominent for everybody to, I would say, at this point in time, look into where you are at a financial level and are you prepared for the next step? Because the white hats are going to mitigate any fallout as much as possible. But again, we're in a war. It is a spiritual war always, first and foremost, but that spiritual war is felt all across the economic, the physical, the mental, psychological, and then, of course, the emotional. So you have to sit here and go, all right, just in case shit hits the fan, what is my backup plan for a month? What is my backup plan in my community if it goes 3 months, right? And everybody needs to have that. And I'm not a financial advisor or an economist, and my goodness, boy, do I ever not want to be one, because I didn't follow down that indoctrination road. I kind of had my red pills waking me up to what the truth was. And thanks to E.W. Griffin in 2005, The Creature of Jekyll Island, that was the big one for me. And I have not had to volunteer myself in the system since 2008. So I hope everybody is aware of the sound money returning. And you just look at the big players, and I'll turn it back to you, John and Larry, now. You look at the big players on the marketplace, bricks being established for over a decade and a half, that are gobbling up gold and silver. We'll get into this a little bit later with more stacks and statistics and facts, excuse me. But when they're gobbling up silver and they're dumping US treasuries and they're dumping US dollars, and Buffett is out there just 5 days ago going, the US dollar, nobody should invest in that anymore. Nobody even wants it. I'm going into Japanese yen. And you have Paulson, Hank Paulson, the former Fed, head of the Fed,
Secretary.
a billionaire himself, saying, well, when the US dollar collapses, this is 6 days ago on the news, everybody, saying this is going to collapse. We need a backup plan from Treasury for what? It's going to the new American currency on July 4th, already announced by the US Treasury just 5 weeks ago. But there will be, I believe, some pain until this ship is completely righted itself, and then every nation and every individual falls behind it, and every country collapses and reforms into a sovereign nation. John.
Well said. Thank you. A couple of quick follow-ups, and we'll turn it over to Larry. We are going to delve into gold and silver in more detail a little bit later. Also, as I conclude each and every Global Financial Reset show, after the one break that I have at the very end, after our guests have signed off, I cover action items, and I'll be doing that again, specific action items and educational places to point people to become cause instead of effect over something they can't control. There are things you can do, and I'll highlight those later. I want to also pedal back to what you said, Brad, about Roosevelt. It's also should be noted to our audience that may not know of what you walked us through about the confiscation of gold back in the day. What a scam that was. And by the way, folks, there was a $10,000 fine if you got caught not turning in your gold. $10,000 in 1934, whatever it was, is probably worth significantly higher than 33, worth. I mean, that's like equivalent of, who knows what, 100,000 today. It's a big fine. But anyway, that was then. This is now. Things are changing. Of course, Nixon took us off the gold standard officially. And finally, we know the whole trajectory with JFK with the executive order 1110 on the silver. That didn't work out, unfortunately. And then Nixon took us off the gold standard, opened up trade with China. That didn't work out so well either. It's been a parabolic graph like this of inflation ever since. But all that, folks, that's coming to an end. That's what Orange Man Bad is taking care of. He's fixing and healing the world. And the people are going to find out and bask in the benefit of that, like a beautiful day at the beach. And that's coming down the line, not too far from now. I want to take us into 3 granular questions related to this Fed Reserve, the IRS, that are your opinions, and I know it's on the mind of everyone listening. And I'm going to go there in just a moment, but I want to give Larry a chance to follow up if you choose to, sir, on anything that Brad just communicated, because he unpacked quite a bit there.
Well, Brad touched on two things that I've done whole shows on. So I'm kind of maybe going to get too deep into this, but I'm going to elaborate on two of the things that you said. I usually spend an hour on each one of these. So let's see if I can be concise. So I usually try to pull all of my knowledge together and see pieces as if I'm looking down from 50,000 feet up. So in terms of the collapses, I've seen a pattern. You alluded to it, but I'm going to elaborate on it a little further. What they do is they always leave the precious metals on the books at a very low price, because what they want to do is when the system starts to fall because people can't afford anything anymore, they always revalue the precious metals, the gold and the silver. And what does that do? That has a specific strategy. It doesn't pay any of our debt off. But what it does is it causes inflation, and that inflation then allows them to pay back that debt in devalued currency. So that's what they do. That's what they've done before. That's what they're doing right now. Trump doesn't have any control over this first piece of what I'm going to talk about. They're doing it again. Why? Because they've had gold held on the treasuries at $42, and Trump is saying we're going to revalue it up to maybe 20,000, and then he's going to go out and he's going to confiscate on the debt clock. Right now, we have confiscated $9.1 trillion from the bad guys already. So he's saying that all the Bitcoin we have was bought with confiscated money. And now he's saying what? That Bitcoin's going to go to $1 million, right? Well, all of that creates a reserve that starts to give people some confidence in the US dollar and mitigates the collapse that's coming from the bonds. And then I want to bring in another thing. If you think that we don't have the money to basically the resources to back our currency, then folks, you're not watching. Basically, Russia is leaving BRICS. India is leaving BRICS. We have more gold than anybody in the world. This is all a chess game. When the time comes, Trump is going to pop in and he's going to say, America is now on a gold standard. We're going to have pain, as you read, but we're going to walk into this. Now, here's where I want to make the deviance. That's what was done before. Basically, create that inflation and pay the debt down. Now, Trump is forced to do that. He's forced to do it. We're going to have inflation. He's bringing in a new head of the Fed. He's going to lower the interest rates. That's because we're going to have to refinance a lot of our debt, but that's going to cause inflation. And that's going to be the scary part. But now let's just review Trump's report card, if you will. And you'll see that he's doing something nobody else has done. He's going to build America faster and bigger and better than it's ever been built before. It's going to be the industrial revolution on steroids. So he's got $18 trillion committed to build new factories. He's basically getting rid of all of the regulations that keep us from building it. He's got 5,915 new technologically innovative patents that are going to come out. He's doing international deals all over the world for the resources that you have to have so you can build those factories. What else is he doing? Access to non-polluting energy. And we already talked about what that's going to do. That's going to mean everything you buy the rest of your life is going to be a fraction of what it is right now. And he's going to replace the federal income tax, with the external income tax, put us on a tax system that we had in the beginning, where it's just based off of revenue, some tariffs, and it's an external revenue service. This is very important. Once he establishes confidence in the dollar, because he's put us back on a gold standard, and once our factories are being built, he's going to reach out to the unbanked. And there's about 3 billion people in Africa and China and other nations of the world. And now an America that they trust from a moral standpoint, from an economic standpoint, from the basis that we've been the least invasive nation in the world. And what's he going to do? Make us a crypto capital of the world. So we're going to get those people coming to us because we have a sound economy now, because he's going to reverse everything. And this is America, based on Trump's plan, is the only nation in the world that is possible of taking the world from the brink of an economic catastrophic collapse, which is what's coming with this bond market, and basically reverse it. So all of those things are coming, and even more. So let's see, I've got a cheat sheet in front of me. I pulled up a slide from one of my other shows when you were talking. He's negotiating a new trade deal with Mexico and China because I'm not China, Mexico and Canada, so that becomes more equitable as well. And he's going to end Western hegemony. So what's that about? That is going to change the dynamics of the entire structure of the world. So I want to bring this in real quickly. So you need to look at the world. I've done an entire hour and a half long shows on this. The world needs to be looked at in 5 pieces right now. So what's happening in most of the world is they're losing their power. The sources that wanted to be the leaders of the world are now going to become regional powers. The EU is falling apart, and China is losing all of its trade, and it's going to all of its neighbors, meaning that power is being disseminated. And basically, you've got the Middle East, and they're pretty much diversified. They're going to come out of this pretty well. They're not depending on just oil. And then you go to Africa, and what happened is they figured out what was done to them by China, and Trump is going to be welcome to come in there if he does this, if he stops doing Western hegemony. And now we look at what's emerging. And again, this is a very brief overview, but Trump is going to bring all of those things in, build our economy, make people confidence in the dollar and in America as the only nation that can restore. And then we're going to look at what America's dominance looks like. We're going to be good relationships with Greenland, with Canada. Look at what's happening in Canada. Alberta has already got all the signatures they need for a vote to leave Canada if they want, and all the other oil producing and resource rich provinces are following and looking at what they're doing. And then you've got Mexico, which was the pipeline that brought all those caravans in. And Trump is leveraging and doing a new economic deal. He's coming after all the cartels and declaring that they are terrorist organizations. But he's not forcing Western hegemony on any of those nations. By the contrast, he's gone in and helped Argentina avoid a bond collapse, the very thing we're talking about. It's probably going to be necessary to help bail out Brazil. So now, if we are truly the friends of everybody in our hemisphere, and we're of course going to be friends with Australia, and we're going to have an opportunity to get access to the resources in Africa, at least some of them, what you see emerging is that the entire Western hemisphere is consolidating power, building power, where the whole eastern portion of the world, the power is being disseminated through multiple regional forces. So you're not going to see the world run by England. You're not going to see it run by Russia. You're not going to see it run by China. We're not going to come out of this as the sole power of the world anymore. We're not going to have a monolithic, one world government. But what we are going to come out with is America is still going to be the economic and innovative leader of the world. Probably 40 or 50% of everything that's bought in the world will be bought with US dollars, because we'll be backed by gold, and because we're going to be the crypto capital of the world. And so America is going to be the number one currency, the number one nation, and it will share that power with Russia and China and India and some others. So the whole world is changing, and while the rest of the world is basically being fractionalized, America is rebuilding its strength. So a rebuilt, strong America will help all of the nations of the world to basically be able to walk us into this new era of peace and prosperity. With that, I'll turn it back to you guys. That was something that I felt needed to be said. It's a little complicated. I deal with it much more thoroughly in hour-long shows, but that kind of gives you the idea.
That was so well presented and so well said. And we're going to talk about Restore the Republic with Larry Ballard and the work Larry's doing, as well as the endeavors of Brad, who knows a thing or two firsthand about Canada, which I'm sure you by all means can comment on. I would like to, these are a couple of things I think are on the minds of our viewers. Let me begin here. Okay, we're talking about, Brad, the dismantling, we'll use this word, of the Federal Reserve. Our audience is well educated. They, of course, know there's nothing federal about it. There is no reserve, and it's Federal Express, blah, blah, blah. Everyone gets that. G. Edward Griffin's great work, and so forth and so on. But the Federal Reserve is illegal, unconstitutional, and makes Madoff's Ponzi scheme look like checkers instead of chess. And so having stated that, that's of course why President Trump is dismantling or dissolving this. Now gets into my question that is really speculation on our behalfs. I'm not quite sure we know exactly. Maybe, I don't know. But here it is. Fast forward a bit. Uh, some folks will say the Federal Reserve already doesn't exist, but I challenge that because we still have their money in our wallets and pocketbooks. So, excuse me, it does exist. At least it's debt. Money is debt. We're still using it. That's coming to an end based on everything our audience has been listening to from our panel here. Um, but what I'm getting at is this question. You fast forward a bit when we further accelerate the issuance of gold backed and other commodity backed money, as you alluded to, Brad, with the March 26th press release from the Treasury, uh, President Trump's signature on the new money. These are all steps and what we've been talking about here to restoring sound money, which of course we know has to be done. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Trump, President Trump in 2017 at the inauguration with the military with him said, I'm giving you back your country. I'm restoring the power back to the people. And you can't do that unless you have sovereign money, unless you have real money. So that's part of this. It's a very big part of it. Now, my question, whether it's right now or a little bit later, the question is the Federal Reserve, I'll state it as a statement, it doesn't go away. They, it's a private entity. They want to stay in business, except Trump trumped them. We're not using your product anymore. So now they're left holding the bag.
Yep.
It's not like they did some dissolution of the corporation one day. Yes, sir, we'll just dissolve it. I don't see that happening. I'm throwing a lot of stuff at the board, but it's an interesting conversation to have. So as we move into new money and we begin to operate as such, and Larry walked us through the inflation, the debt, we have a lot of pain, the bond problem, and all that, which we'll get to. Do you see it that way, Brad? I mean, it's a process, right? I mean, the Fed isn't just going to sign off and end their corporation tomorrow morning and, go become landscapers or, some other career. They're just going to sit there for a while, and some of the world may be using that. I mean, I don't know, but what's your view? It's not like it just shuts down tomorrow. It is a process which has been going on since 2020, when President Trump first began to remove the powers of the Treasury, of the Fed, into the Treasury. I see it more of a process. Comment on that, if you will. Help me out with this.
Sure. And I'll preface this, which at least I can say with John and the shows that we've done, likely Larry as well, we don't know the exact white hat plan. But based on the fact that President Trump is a genius, is a business leader, he cares for people who are around him. You can go back decades and hear stories that were not all in the news about how he's paid somebody's mortgage, he took care of their car, he's taken care of all of his people. So you have the character of a man like this, and this man has been through business bankruptcies more than once. So effectively then, when you're looking at a corporate takeover, which Federal Reserve is a corporation, you've already established it, and you're looking at a bankruptcy, which our great friend Dr. Jan Halper Hayes was on Great Britain News 3 years ago saying Biden is the president of a bankrupt corporation, then effectively what do? So if I'm General Motors and I'm Lee Iacocca and I'm sitting here and saying, or I'm Air Canada or United Airlines going, we're bankrupt. Well, guess what? Your customers are still on your planes. Your people are still buying cars at dealerships. You just have a restructuring, and then all of a sudden it's something new. So equivocally, I would look at this from the standpoint, number one, National Security Strategy 2025, the economic strategy to turn America into a powerhouse and to resurrect the value of the US dollar is paramount. That is in the National Security Strategy 2025. Everybody can find that online. And now when they say US dollar and you go up to March 26th and you sit here and go, US Treasury just issued a press release here with Secretary Scott Bessent on here saying that President Trump's autograph, his signature, will be on the new American currency. I mean, what else do people need to know that this is going to happen? And effectively, too, in a bankruptcy situation, I would see it like this. There may be a term of 6 months or a year for everybody who has Federal Reserve dollar notes to swap it out and exchange it for perhaps a new American rainbow colored currency that is backed by true gold. And once again, when we look at the constitutional law, the Philadelphia Coinage Act of 1792, who signed on that? It was George Washington, the man who went across the Delaware, the man who helped take care of what's happening right now in Washington in this pivotal moment where the King Charles and Queen Kamala, isn't that her name? I'd like to think so. Smiles for everybody out there, is standing there sitting in front of Revolutionary War soldiers from America and having to listen to the American anthem played for them at Andrews Air Force Base when they land. I mean, the comms are off the charts, and anybody smarter than a fifth grader, maybe a sixth grader, can literally put one and one together. National security strategy, US dollar currency, July 4th, American president, first ever of its time, and a president that does everything by law, not fraudulently. And he's following this through as the wartime commander in chief, ensuring the sovereignty of the American nation and the constitutional republic, for which he stands for which Larry so aptly once again reminded everybody, and so did you, John, that he's putting the power back in the hands of the people during his first address to the nation when he was sworn in as 45. And it is truly monumental. So I don't see any worries that your ones and zeros in your bank account are not going to be equated to the new American currency. And anybody that has central banks that have these currencies, anybody who is out there in the marketplace that speaks multiple languages in over 140 countries around the world, hey, you might have a year to get somewhere to trade it in and get the equivalent back in the new currency. And to me, it's a non-issue. And I don't see it as something to be afraid of. There's no point because it's been set up in the background for a long time. But quantum financial computers have been around for decades. And if anybody isn't aware of that, President Trump pointed that out in January of this year, that quantum computers have been around since the time I was born. That man is over 80 years old right now. So they have this in hand. And I think the important part is that people are taking care of themselves and taking care of their community, John, and preparing for everything. Because as I learned in the Canadian military, it was the rule of 7Ps. The law of 7Ps is also known this way too. Proper previous planning prevents a piss poor performance. And the White Hats have been busy pumping this out here. And Juan O'Savin is a White Hat and is the man when we were together in Anaheim, California, who said at that point in time, aside from Scavino, I have the most access to President Trump. And when Juan O'Savin is telling you, like he did last year, said, you know what, silver is going to hit $50 an ounce by the end of the summer. And 3.5 weeks later, it hit it. And this is trading at 35 and 38. And people are going, you're crazy. Well, this man has been calling it by the book. And I would listen to him and this show. And people, don't move forward in fear. Just be prepared because that tsunami is going to hit globally. Things are going to switch for the black hats and for the deep state. And you, if you're a sovereign man or woman, a living, breathing family on the land of wherever you are prepared. You're going to be celebrating, just like you said, John, at a great day at the beach. But hopefully there's going to be some mermaids, there's going to be some champagne and Dom Perignon spreading out here. I'm just having a little bit of fun with everybody. It's going to be a great time. And that is the land of peace and prosperity that we need in the Global Economic Security and Reparation Act that is signed by multiple nations as they return to the sovereign nationhood or they become an American territory or the 51st state, 52nd, 54th, and goes on. Because once again, we had 77 stars on the American flag 2 years ago, August, when President Trump was getting this speech at the Fraternal Order of Police. And they were putting that in front of everybody's faces on purpose. Back to you, gentlemen.
Wow. You unpacked quite a bit. You know, folks, you can take any one question I've asked, any one panel of guests, and just listen to that over and over again. There's a lot of good data coming at you. Now, some of folks may be aware of this, a lot of folks aren't, and some are commentary and analysis and opinions. But this is very, very good information, Brad. Thank you. And you mentioned the National Security Strategy book. I have that published on my website, folks, jmcbroadcasting.com. I think it's under the resource guide page or President Trump's page. You'll see the three key publications from from our administration, so you don't have to guess what we're doing. It's all there. And so thank you for that, Brad. I'm going to ask you one more question, brief commentary on this, and then we're going to turn the double barrel questions over to Larry, and I'll remind Larry the first question in a moment. But Brad, IRS.
Well, I'm the warm-up act, Larry.
No, well, you guys are warming up each other. This is a wonderful thing.
This is my fifth hour in the seat, so that's why I might be getting a little long in the tooth,
Wow.
Everybody. Pardon me for the live streams here.
That's
Go
okay.
ahead.
We're doing what we do. It's all good. Okay, so you shared your views on the Federal Reserve doesn't just, it's a bankrupt corp and they go through the process. Great analogy you made, Lee Iacocca, the airplanes, the cars, the money, blah, blah, blah. I think that's fairly accurate. So it's a clarification for me, and I think it's well-founded, and for many in our audience, could be a diverse audience in the millions all over the world. So that's, I believe, probably what is happening and will continue to progress. Same question now about the IRS, the little cousin that came aboard with the Federal Reserve, that also illegal, unconstitutional, and voluntary. Having said that, a lot of folks have easily stated it's no longer in existence, but I, of course, will challenge that. Of course, it is in existence. It's just being neutered and decapitated and being replaced, to Larry's point, External Revenue Service, the tariffs, all the money and wealth we've accumulated back that's been stolen. We're the richest nation on God's earth times a million right now, and that'll play out as time goes by. But so the IRS is still here. I know people that still get notices and are having, those issues. So it's the same sort of a question. How does it die the same way the Fed dies, a slow, painful death? Because the IRS is not a government agency; it's a collection agency, and it's outside the Constitution and it's outside the law of the land. And so, as President Trump exposes this, and as we start to move the actions of the IRS away through the methods Larry talked about, is it sort of the same thing, a slow death as the Fed? I mean, they didn't close their books. They didn't send an announcement saying we're no longer functioning. How do you see, in the simplest terms, the dissolution of that in this transition before it's gone? Because it's still there. It's still
my intuition and my belief, I've had this for 2 years, it hasn't changed, is that it's going to be immediate, abrupt, and everybody's going to be cheering, because this is something that is an adage we grew up with, your parents grew up with, and mine that, fled the Blitzkrieg in Poland and Ukraine from the Nazis. That same Waffen SS battalion commander of 92 years old in Ottawa Parliament, that was applauded by Justin Trudeau, Pierre Poilievre, and all of them. They grew up with the adage of you can never escape death and taxes. Well, just imagine what happens when President Trump sits here and says, we're returning to constitutional money, sound money. This is the new American currency. And oh, by the way, since the Federal Reserve 1913 Act that came in and brought it in is a corporation that's been under the Treasury since 2019, we have so much money. He's been continuing to pound this. We have so much money that you will be getting money back from the IRS. And you know what? We've looked at it and we've decided that we really don't think you need to pay income taxes anymore. He's been building that narrative up for 2 years, by the way, starting with the no money, no tips since July of 2024. And then President Trump just sits there and flips a switch and goes, you know what? We have so much money coming in. We're the wealthiest nation on earth, as we should be. We are one nation under God, rededicated in May 17th. which is the Day of Repentance that George Washington put forward there 250 years ago. It's amazing to watch all this come full circle as bookends, and everybody will love him. I mean, how can you break the cognitive dissonance and the MK Ultra type of conditioning of people that they must pay taxes, and then you sit there and you tell them that no, you don't, no, you don't, no, you don't. You have generational epigenetic core in your DNA. Can't escape death or taxes, death or taxes. And then you take this off the table. That is a true feeling of liberty right now for the people in America.
Yeah.
And then for the people around the world who are in Venezuela's and China's and Britain, the UK, that are still dealing with this real terrible stuff going on, right? We have the immigration, we have MAID. We just had Bobby Kennedy last week say there that the law is abhorrent in Canada, that they've murdered 90,000 people. And on come back from it from the financial standpoint, people go, right now they're saying, yeah, maybe I want to vote in another prime minister of Canada, but look what America is doing. We want America. America, would you finally just take us? We're so sick of this because Canadians are leaving America. Canadians are leaving Canada in droves right now. Many of them are looking for asylum. They wouldn't even take my asylum claim 2 years ago, right? But before that goes anywhere, it has to be America, and it has to be President Trump, and it has to be shown that the George Washington of our time, POTUS 45-47, is the man who is freeing the people, God's people, with God's money. And it can't get any grander or better than that, in my opinion, John. It'll
Beautiful.
be swift.
God bless you. Well said. Truth bombs. Larry, if you wouldn't mind, I'm sure you want to comment on a lot of things, please do. But my questions, as Brad has addressed really well, we're talking about the how of the Federal Reserve going away, the how of the IRS going away. How do you see it playing out? Do you concur with Brad's analysis or want to contribute to that in any way, shape, or form?
Well, I agree with a lot of what he said, but this is the one place I want to give a caveat. I think we're all speculating on this particular topic.
Yeah.
And there's going to be differences of opinions. So I'm going to start by going back, and I'm going to say, what happens when that money goes away, when the Fed goes away, when the IRS goes away? The fiat currency allows the government to create a situation where they drive us into debt. And what they're able to do is then create a big bubble and pop it anytime they want. And they therefore can trigger inflation, deflation, wage suppression, financial collapse. You losing your home, you're losing everything you have. And that cycle goes on and on and on. They can't do that when we go to sovereign currency. But where I'm going to differ a little bit, I don't think Brad said anything was wrong, but I approach things a little bit differently. I always go to the Bible, and the Bible says always look for the root cause of a thing. So I'm going to bring the root cause into this conversation. And I'm going to say the source for the money is what? Is basically gold. That's what we've used as a standard, right? But now in an economic era that's emerging, that's going to create a new economic revolution, I think that gold is just one component. I think the more significant component now it's shifting is silver, because we're going to have a new industrial revolution and we're going to have lots and lots of silver. But then where does the value of money go even further than that? It's all of the resources that God created. It's basically water. And then we have a critical water shortage. That's what's facing the world. That's the greatest threat we have right now, not the phony carbon footprint. So basically what you have in this new economy is things that cannot be controlled and manipulated. They can't create wage suppression and financial collapses and boom and bust periods, because each one of those things has a necessity. It's basically tied to part of the necessities of life. It has intrinsic value in and of itself. We have to have wheat, we have to have barley, we have to have the metals, we have to have the resources to manufacture. Trump's going out and getting all of that. He's going out. So it starts with this reformation that we have by getting all of the natural resources. We were dependent on other nations for natural resources. Then what is he doing? He's coming in and he's saying, we allowed them to control us by having places in the world where there were finished goods, like computer chips, that they could use to control us. He's getting rid of that. He's bringing computer chips to the United States, more diversification. And basically, we're going to go deeper and deeper and down into where we understand that everything that God made was made in abundance. I think we're going to have a completely new economic system that comes out of this. And here's what God showed me way back in 68. The kingdoms of man are going to fall. That means capitalism. By the way, we haven't had capitalism in all of my lifetime. We've had crony capitalism because it's controlled. But capitalism basically is based upon greed, and it's based on wasting the natural resources that God gave us. Communism is based on suppression. It's going to fall. So God showed me in 1968 there would be a new technology, i.e., the quantum computing and XRP and the ledger that we have with blockchain that can instantaneously give us voter integrity and end all the money laundering and the human trafficking and everything. So that technology is on the scene right now for the first time in my lifetime, and it's going to change everything. So here's what I think is coming. Now, this is not this week, this month, next year. It's going to take some time. But what's going to happen is we're going to go into a completely new economic system based on God's principles. And what we're going to do is we're going to have natural resources shared with every nation of the world. Trump's been talking about this. And we go back and we had Lincoln. Lincoln said that he feared for our great nation because of the formation of banks and corporations that would eventually take over everything. So if we have this new technology that gives us voting integrity, and now we have politicians that have been removed because they didn't represent us, and we have people in that are representing our best interests, anything is possible. We can do anything. And so what I see this new system is there's no more Western hegemony. We did just what we did when we came out of the Industrial Revolution as the wealthiest nation in the world. We developed the innovation. We are going to be the innovators of the world that's going to pull the world out through massive introductions of new revolutionary technology. So it comes from the natural resources to the manufacturing of new innovative products to the distribution of those products through America that has a global reach, which turns into money, which allows us to get control of the 8 spheres of influence, so that now we, with our new government, having kicked out the old corrupt government, are able to control all the spheres of influence, and everything changes. But now coming back to the short term, I see this is at one point, what Brad said is absolutely right. It's going to happen like that. But I think there's a couple of intermediate steps that come first. So I want to go back to what's happening in Iran. And I think that's our first intermediate. People are out there saying, oh, gosh, I hope the dinar and the dong revalue. But gosh, I'm pretty skeptical because it's been years. I mean, we go back to the 1960s for Vietnam. Well, what I've seen when I've done my homework is I've seen that the whole of Asia is waking up. I see that manufacturing is coming from China and going to Vietnam. I see they have brand new shiny factories. I see that they have one of the youngest workforces in the world. I see that their labor rates are lower than China. I see that they have a strong domestic market and international market. And from every criteria that you can look at, there's no reason that internally they should not revalue their currencies. Then we go to Iraq, and we see to it that they've rebuilt their infrastructure. They're exporting oil that's refined, and so then they're there. So what's the missing piece? If both of these countries are economically sound, if they're innovators, why haven't the currencies revalued? Well, it's because you always have to have political stability for the currencies to revalue. So what just happened in the last week? Basically, we've removed our hand. The United States is no longer going to be puppeting Iraq, not at all. And now they're using their own currency. So they're basically getting out from under the control of the United States. And when this war is ended, there's a certain control mechanism that comes from Iran on both Vietnam and on Iraq, and they're going to be removed. And so now what is telling me that we could be seeing in the very near future a revaluation of the dong and the dinar, which I think people are waiting for, is because now you have to have a sovereign government to control your finances. And there's a new president, when it's favorable, when it's saying, let's make Iraq great again. What's that sound like, folks? That sounds like Donald J. Trump. And basically, they're going to have a new parliament and they're going to have a new government. And what is a legitimate government able to do? It's able to have a budget. It's able to plan for infrastructure. And most importantly, it's able to determine the rate for their currencies. So now I see that the final thing that had to happen for the Vietnam dong and the Iraqi dinar to revalue is at the door. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but I'm saying end this war and get the footprint of Iran off of Iraq and get the footprint of the United States off, and then we'll have political stability and economic stability, and those currencies can come. Then the second thing, I think this is an area that Brad knows much more about me, so I'm just going to say it real quick and defer to him when I'm done, is silver is going to go through the roof, because as we develop this new technology, we're going to have silver. Silver has become the quintessential metal, and we're going to as soon as those factories start being built, we're going to have to raise silver, because we have very few mines in this world that are solely dedicated to producing silver. Silver is a byproduct of several other minerals that they get out of the ground. So according to the experts that I listen to, they're not going to be able to hold silver down much longer. Once we start developing these factories, it's going to have to go to $300 to $400 to $500 in order to incent those mines to be opened up and start producing. And there's no telling where it can go. There are people that say, and I'm not the expert, that it might go to where it's as high as gold, because it has more intrinsic uses than gold does. So that's the second thing that I see. And then we go to where I think we're with Brad. Everything starts to happen very quickly after that. After we have a sovereign currency, after we have a currency that's backed by gold and silver, and then as we release the technologies, now we're ready to say that the Fed is going to be dismantled, and Trump is already doing that. And we had 6 Supreme Court decisions that said that the IRS was unconstitutional, that the Fed was unconstitutional. It's all being dismantled right now as we speak. But in terms of the last part of it, I'm just speculating here. I think that there's going to be some banks that are closed. I think there's going to be the corporations that have most vehemently been against us that are going to go off of the stock market completely. And I think that governments around the world are going to fall. So it's going to be that's where your cataclysm comes in. And it could be, I don't know, but it could be that if you have a mortgage with one of the big banks, and there's different forms of bankruptcy, and depending on what it is, it might be that you don't even owe that money anymore, because there was no value in that in the beginning. And that's where the basis of Nasara came from the court decision that said we side with the people who are arguing for Nasara, because the banks put nothing in except fiat currency worth nothing, where the farmers put in their life's blood, their sweat, their tears, and on all of their money. And so basically, I think it's all going to come apart, and we're going to go back to what we had in the first place, a government that is run by the people, for the people, that worships God, that bends the knee to God, and that understands that everything starts with natural resources, manufacturing and trade converted into money, used to control the world for good or evil. And that's what I think is coming. And I think it's going to probably be at least three lanes of a highway that take us down until we have that big moment where basically everything happens and the Nasara kicks in and we get all the blessings that we've been looking for. But technologically, the things that are coming are so revolutionary that just think of this. This is where I'll end this. Think about if you don't have any federal income tax, look how much money that puts in your pocket. Think about it if we get out from under. The bond issue is basically tied to schools. And if we get out of property tax, now you're not paying property tax, you're not paying federal income tax. And now if you're buying goods that are made with virtually clean, free energy, the goods that you buy are going to be 40, 50, 60, 70% less, depending on how complex the logistics chain is. Folks, that's absolute. Regardless of what they give us back, we've just created a completely new economic system of bounty, of plenty for the entire world. And if we go into that new economic system that I talked about, here's something else that happens. Manufacturing is not hoarded. The technology is shared around the world. The resources are shared around the world. And we go to building things that can last forever. There are places built in the Middle East that are 4,000 years old. Automobiles can be built to last 100 years. Houses can be built. We have the technology to build things that last. And what is the principal justification that the global financial elite have for killing 7.5 billion of us? We're consuming too many of what they consider to be their natural resources. Well, if we go to a world that has conservation, true conservation, meaning that things are built to last virtually forever, all of a sudden, the amount of resources that we require to run this world are absolutely minimal. And then we're going to get new technologies that are going to make it even more efficient. So I can't tell you the when, the where, the how, but I think that it's all going to happen. I think the SAR is real. I think there's going to be a currency reset, and I think there's going to be technology that's going to blow your mind. So don't be afraid. There's going to be that period where the banks are falling, the corporations are falling, and the political elite is being taken out and put in by people who are going to represent the interest of the people of the world. With that, I'll go back to you guys.
Wow, thank you very much. Couple of quick comments. Well, clearly, folks listening, the world is changing, and rather rapidly, actually, when you think about the thousands of years that evil has ruled this space. That's changing. So the world is changing, and to everyone that's listening, I know a lot of folks are feeling, I'm going to just say it, help is on the way. And I think you can see that from both the content that Larry and Brad have provided from a spiritual sense, from a historical sense, and from solid analysis of what's unfolding right before our very eyes. And the last thing I want to say, touching back to what Larry first talked about, is not tomorrow morning, as Larry stated, but as this progresses, and there'll be some point where certain things will just snap and pop, and other things will take time. We are, of course, talking about the entire planet, and we are talking about nearly 8 billion people. This isn't just us in America. It starts with us, always has, and we'll take care of business. But the thing I want to say is we will be at a point where there'll be no scarcity of necessities. Process that statement and define necessities. It's interesting. No scarcity of necessities, but rather living in abundance in a more moral world, alluding to the QFS and how that'll change that aspect. This is where, and this is for another broadcast, this is where, and don't take me out of context, folks, but this is where science and God get very close. That's kind of where we are right now. Very, very close, and it's very interesting. And we'll save that for another broadcast. We're now touching into hour 2. We're 90 minutes into the broadcast. I've got a few more subjects I'd like to touch on, where each of you can unpack hours of content for us. Let's get our answers concise to 3 or 4 minutes so we can cover the few more subjects and then wrap up the broadcast. And I greatly appreciate each of you, gentlemen. Okay, Larry, you started to touch on the silver issue towards the end. Perfect dovetail. We'll go to Brad. We'll come back to you, Larry. I know you've been following, Brad, the silver, the naked shorts of the banks, the debacle, the game that's coming to an end that the central banks have been doing to manipulate the value of gold and silver forever. Talk to us about that. Where are we at right now? Because silver's, they've managed to keep it 72, 76, 74, gold 44, 47, 48. There seems to be still some of the mechanics in play of old day that are still keeping and controlling these values. Do you see it that way? How much more time does the central bank have? Break that down for us, because each of you gentlemen, as well as 107 and many other people, even Jamie Dimon, who's on the other opposite side of everything from us, people know the gig is up, the game is over, and analysts worth their salt throughout the world all have gold and silver going through the roof. But I'd like you, Brad, to break it down from your view, your perspective, and your opinion and your analysis of when is this game going to finally end, and when does gold and silver catapult? Anything you can contribute to that, and again, 3-4 minutes plus to take this on.
Yeah, certainly, John. Be happy to. And just so everybody knows, this is like a master class that, especially with what Larry just covered right now, to unpack, you might want to go through this a few more times. This is a master class in sound money. And this is not where we're headed. This is what we're in right now as it's playing out and being unveiled. And to answer your question, it'll be very simple, John. Going back to the Coinage Act of 1792, right? Bimetallic. The ratio is 15-1, silver to gold. Now, for example, if gold goes to 20 grand, and just so you know, Robert Kiyosaki, who's a friend of President Trump, a former United States Marine, a Vietnam veteran, rich dad, poor dad himself, right, owns 2 gold mines and a silver mine, and has been out there for years. And 3 years ago said that you should anticipate gold and get ready for it to go to $27,000 an ounce. Okay, fine. Well, that's what he said, and I totally believe it is going to get there. But again, it doesn't have the industrial requirements as for what you guys have alliterated here. But at $20,000 an ounce gold, that's $1,333 an ounce. Silver, if you're following the bimetallic ratio set by constitutional money signed into law by George Washington before it was taken out in 1871 and a corporation usurped the constitutional republic of our continent. Secondly, and the final point on this very simply, is you look at LBMA lost on April 1st, happy April Fool's Day, from India, said goodbye. They withdrew from the London bullion market exchange entirely. And we continue to see the disparity between Shanghai futures and Shanghai silver and gold physical. Yep. And just last month, it was reported that China bought over 50,000 ounces of silver, importing it on top of them closing off on April 1st themselves any silver exports. Now, they did this on January 1st. People are like, oh, wait, no, they did that January 1st, but they allowed 44 special export licenses. Those are done. Those are sealed. They shut down those factories for exporting, and they have ramped them up 24/7 from what I've seen in reports on shifts to continue to mine and refine silver concentrate as well as other critical minerals concentrate. So when you sit here and you're looking at why is it this, why is it that, why do we hear COMEX, you are continuing to see the last vestiges and the last breaths of the deep state, Wolf of Wall Street pump and dump system until President Trump steps in my belief, July 4th and goes, here's the new American currency, here's the revaluation. We are setting a price floor on these precious metals and minerals. And oh, by the way, we don't need to buy lithium anymore, anybody, because we have 398 years supply that we found just up in the Ozarks. It's going to be epic. And that's something where people need to pay attention to it, because from simple supply and demand in economics, way too much demand, not enough supply for it. So it's going to drive the prices through the roof. And then you have an executive order, which is nationalized silver, nationalized. We saw the nationalization of gold in 1933, which we spoke of earlier with Roosevelt, and you had to hand it all in at the threat of a $10,000 fine with a gun in your face and a full year of jail time. And so here we are reversing that narrative 93 years later, right now, coming up on the 250th anniversary. That was 6 minutes, John. Sorry it wasn't 3 to 4.
Okay, it works. It works for me. Thank you. And you're right, Brad. This is a master class for all of us. Some folks are well schooled and are just getting validation and perhaps learning a bit more. And a lot of us are learning a lot. And thank you both very much. I will say this. I'm hopeful. Faith, hope, and love. I've always been called the hope guy on the Clay Clark stages back in the day. You know, and I understand the press release from the Treasury about March 26th with Trump's new signature, and all the narratives put out there by the president and by Dan Scavino and by Scott Bessent. But I'm not sure. I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver. I'm not quite sure that we'll be in a new currency on July 4th. I don't see that yet. I hope so. It makes all the sense in the world. All the dots are there to connect. And certainly the president has alluded to, this 250 being something special. But I think it's a bit more of a process. Just a quick comment, quick feedback on my counter narrative, even though I'm the hope guy, about could it really be July 4th that we got a whole new currency? I think it's going to take time. Quick comment, Brad, before we go to Larry. Quick comment on my feedback.
Well, yeah, why not? I mean, look at 1913. They just put something into law and Christmas Eve and went, okay, this starts now. And the way that they finally forced it to everybody after they did their pump and dump 1929 rigged stock market game and put everybody into the depression of the 30s, they didn't have the printing presses and the reach that they had now for everybody. And this has been building up. I mean, we have reports of people at banks that have been trained for almost 4 years at certain banks and credit unions in different countries and nations around the planet, in particular in the USA, that are under strict NDAs. And some of the people you've had on the show have mentioned that they know those people too, John. So
Yes.
why couldn't it just be, here's the announcement,
We could.
here's the unveiling of the new currency, and over the course of the next year, you just show up to your credit union, because we're not going to go over to the deep state certain banks anymore, and you just do their
No,
swap.
we're not.
Big deal, right? And anything that you take out of the machine now, or anything that's in your new ledger that's run on XRP ledger, and you have XRP and you have the ISO 20022 coins, they're already adapted to that, and they're backed by a stable coin, which is then backed by a precious metal and constitutional sound money. And that's how those are minted against that. So I don't see why that's a big deal if you are setting the stage and going, here's our announcement, this is why we're moving over there, and here's why, and here's the benefit for everybody. And maybe, oh, by the way, we've taken in so much money in tariffs, you don't have to pay taxes anymore as an American. Right. That could be amazing.
Yeah, no, listen, Brad, I agree
with
with you. All the pieces are in place. There's no question about it. We're still stuck in the old system, but all the pieces are in place. And if you're saying the trigger date, at least on the aspect that we're discussing right now, is July 4th, I hope and pray that is accurate and it's logical. And you're absolutely right that it could be just like that. And let's hope and pray that that happens on July 4th. Quick question, last on Brad on silver, and we'll go to Larry. And then we're going to wrap up in the next 10 minutes with 1 or 2 more closing points. But I want to ask you, Brad, it's crystal ball question, but so there's your disclaimer. Only God knows, and perhaps President Trump and a few others. But I ask you, Brad, do you think the breakout, the chains are off, the naked shorts, all the elements that we've just spoken about, the price point of silver and gold, do you think the game's over, the catapulting growth, let's say silver's going to go north of 120, and then north of that, and gold's going to go north of 5,000, and then a little bit north of that, and north of that. Does this occur in Brad Wozny's crystal ball before the end of this calendar year?
100%. And I'll tell you why. It's backed up by executive orders and the fact that we know. Once again, I've been doing shows with Derek on our Where We Go On We Go all weekly for almost 3 years. We had the F-16s flying over our heads that Juan sent in Cheyenne, Wyoming. National Command Authority or President Trump are the only ones that can allow that and authorize that, everybody. So I say absolutely, because if you believe in the executive orders and you believe in the laws and the orders and the Constitution and what President Trump and the White Hat plan has been for decades in bringing this along, then by virtue of that belief and knowledge, you should know that the banking systems are under that control, because Treasury took under the Federal Reserve. And now we also know about the clones that are playing their parts, especially with what's been going on over in Gitmo on your other show. They've been pumping out there. Yes. So you just simply draw the parallel lines together, which all map up to a point in time, an arrowhead, so to speak, John, that sits here and says that they are players on a stage showing you what's going to happen. So if anybody wants any relevance to that, okay, we'll look at what Bank of America and JPM Chase have just put out over the last 9 weeks regarding the price of silver, right? They keep pushing it up. Oh, JP Morgan, okay, well, maybe it's going to be 398 by December, but it could very well be 190 by July. They're prepping everybody for this shift and putting it out there, and they're not being reeled in, because there's no way those who are buying into the XRP ledger, the ISO 20022, the shift happened in November of 2025. All the banks had to be compliant at that point in time. They're either on the bus or they're getting steamrolled and run over by that same bus, just to use that metaphor for everybody and leave it at that. Yeah. So this is 100%, again, a military operation, again, to turn the power over back to the people. And this is an aspect of that on the financial, to end the enslavement, the financial and the debt instrument and the tax enslavement. And again, I believe, saying this for your whole show here, for everybody in the audience, I believe it's the America 250 July 4th date that kicks it all off for those celebrations in this vernacular. Does that make sense, John?
Well said. Well said, and thank you for citing some of the orders and different things that you and Derek, and of course Derek Johnson, good friend of ours. It was Derek and I that came up with the concept to form the Global Defense Board panel, which introduced me to you and many other great military men. So I appreciate the work of Derek, and I'm glad you guys keep pounding it out for the people to continue to learn, as well as myself. Thank you. We're going to conclude. Before we do, what I'd like to do is spend there's two things I'd like to do in the next 5 to 7 minutes before we wrap up 10 minutes is highlight what each of you are doing. So those that are just learning of you newly, because we have a lot of new people coming into our space right now, because the Patriots, in conjunction with certainly the White Hats, but we've done our job over the last 10 years. And we're at a point now where we used to call them the normies or the sheeple, or those that are asleep. We call them now the target audience. Look, these are our friends, except the lunatics. Forget about them. God will deal with them later. But people are waking up, and they're looking around, and they're finding programs like mine and many others. And so I want people to understand how they can continue to follow each of you. So spend a few minutes, Brad, talk about your show, what kind of guests you have, what kind of things you cover, and how people can follow you.
Thank you, John. I feel like I'm stealing Larry's spotlight here, but truly appreciate everybody.
Larry will close us out.
He'll have his time. I know. I get that. As a matter of fact, in about 5 days, you'll be on my show. We're going to be doing the Soul Speak. So I still don't even have a website, and coming up on 4 years this May. So just a matter of a few hours, I'll be clicking over to 4 years doing the Sovereign Soul show. Rumble took down 35 of the videos, I guess, for misinformation. But that was in the early days. But you can find me at rumble.com/C Charlie /The Sovereign Soul. I know you have the links here. I'm a contributor to John Michael Chambers and JMC Broadcasting. But I've been talking about anything ancient, current, and quantum. That's kind of the leap here. The whole focus, though, is on our ethos, as it states, is love, levity, and liberty. So every topic, every guest, we have to tie back to that from a global perspective. So I don't always focus on a Canada issue, an America issue. We go all across full spectrum. And I have several different types of series on the Sovereign Soul show, from Warriors of Wellness to Soul Speak, living from the art of your heart, which is, you'll be on with me next week doing that, John. We have other ones, Starseed Children, speaking about that. And then just general topics where we go all weekly. And as mentioned, Derek and I have been doing that for a long time. We're on a bit of a hiatus on that one right now. And expanding that sovereign media engine to everybody, because full blown, we are a soul that is in your body. Your body is also part of your soul. And I got the download from Source God a number of years ago that soul is an acronym, as we military types like our acronyms, right? For sound of unlimited love. And it has to get back to love. That is, again, the cornerstone of everything we do on the show. And it's righteous anger because it stands for the children. And I started the show seeing what they did to us at the Freedom Convoy and sat there and went, how can we prevent this from ever happening again? And this is my weapon, is words and love, and bringing on incredible guests, heroes and heroines across all different topics and industries, and speaking about things from free energy, which even when I had a guy on 2 years ago, people said, this is crazy, it doesn't exist. And he showed it, and he had light bulb from the air, and light bulb he put into his cup, and it lit up, and he put it into a light socket. We did it all live, and some people thought it was before AI 2.5 years ago. Everybody remembers those times, how fast we're moving. And it was true. And here we are right now, at a precipice of a time, an ascension for our new earth, rising into a tier 1 civilization where you will have no need or no want, because you live in abundance, peace, and prosperity with a set of divine natural laws gifted to us by our God creator, the great omnipresence of divinity, to do no harm and to do everything that you can to enjoy your life that contributes to the rest of the people around you, whatever fashion that might be, science, mathematics, you name it. And that's what we're all about, John. And it's a distinct pleasure to have people on the show and be on other people's shows. I think I'm at 1,250 or 1,300 shows now, and meeting people like Major General Valley and Lieutenant General McInerney, the producer for them at Stand Up America US Foundation. And who knew that I would be their producer? And I have a live stream with them tomorrow morning as well to catch up on those two incredible men who are literal national treasures in my book, who are part of the 200 generals that President Trump said and turned around to Hillary Clinton. Everybody remembers that on the campaign. She goes, well, you and who, what army? And he goes, I have 200 generals. You should be in jail. Those incredible men and the sacrifices and the people around them, like real Mary Fanning, and everything that they've been doing to return America to a sovereign nation and return it to a nation under God and be the pinnacle on earth for everything that's meaningful in our lives, for our children, and then also for us to move forward in the pursuit of happiness. And thanks for your time. Thanks for listening to me drone on, everybody. Appreciate it.
No problem. We're very valuable and very engaging. A couple of quick comments. We'll go over to Larry in a moment. Yes, say hello to the two generals. I've interviewed General McInerney on the Conversations of Consequence, and both General McInerney and General Valley, years back, 2020, when they stole our election, I had both of them on several times when I was a host in the early days of American Media Periscope when J6 was unfolding. And so say hello to the gentleman for me and wish them the best. And Mary Fanning, I had Mary Fanning in the Conversations of Consequence way back when she dumped the hammer and scorecard on us all. And these are great people. I love your acronym for SOUL. What was that again?
Sound of Unlimited Love. That was a download God gave me.
Perfect.
Sound of Unlimited Love.
I love that. Very nice. Thank you, Brad. Stay right there. We'll say goodbye to you in a moment. Larry, I want to make an announcement to the public, and we've produced a 90-second promo, and we've put it out on Rumble, and you can look for it on there. But, better than that is this. We have Larry right here. Restore the Republic is the title of a dedicated page on jmcbroadcasting.com, just launched this week. Why don't you describe it? You can describe it much better than I, Larry. But Larry, go ahead, Larry. Take it away. What is Restore the Republic going to be about? What are you doing? How can people follow you? How can people pick up your materials and so forth? Share all this with our viewers, please.
My journey is different than most people's. I look at Brad and I say, Brad's connected. So if you want to get sound information that's coming from the sources on top, Brad's your guy. That's not what God put me here for. I died in 1968, and God said, you're going to study for the rest of your life. You're going to travel all over the world. You're going to be in a number of strategic positions, because what I'm going to give you can't just be intellectual information. You have to live it, and you have to see it, and you have to be able to unravel it, and then you're going to do something that very few people out there do. So what I bring to the table that's somewhat unique is I've been preparing for 57 years, and God gave me a near photographic memory. So what I learned back 50 years ago, I can remember. The things I studied, I couldn't understand why God was having me do them. He says, you need to read geology, anthropology, sociology, climatology, on and on and on. You have to study history. You have to read the Quran cover to cover, because basically all of those things are going to come together at the end to do what? To open the people's eyes so the truth can set them free. And he said, your assignment is going to be a long one. You're not going to come out. You're going to be brought out at the very last moment, because if you come out prematurely, the message will fall on deaf ears. So basically I'm reaching that moment now where it's the appointed time when God said, I will remove you from the cleft of the rock, when the world is at the most critical tipping point it's ever been in. And I think we're there. And I want to go back and say, the only other time in history that I think parallels where we're at right now was when we were trying to form our Constitution, and the big states and the little states couldn't come together. And Benjamin Franklin stepped up and said, we can't do this. Benjamin Franklin says we have to pray to God for guidance. And then every time that session commenced, they prayed to God, and we got our Constitution, and we got our Declaration of Independence, and we got all the rights that were put into our government. And it's a government that was said was not written by the laws of man, but based on the laws of God. And so now with that, what I do that's different is God told me to store all that information, and I would be able to see the puzzle pieces that few people can see. And in everything I do, I'm not looking at intelligence coming from other people. I'm looking at the 50,000 foot view from the top looking down, where I can see all the puzzle pieces. And because I've studied so many diverse things, been in so many diverse jobs, been in so many critical places at critical times, I have the ability to put those pieces together so that I can do just exactly what God said. I can open the people's eyes by making the complex simple. So why 107 approached me in the first place is he saw that in me. He saw that I had the ability to step into any complicated situation where you had an expert who knew what he was talking about, but it was too complex. People couldn't understand it. So my expertise is I can take the complex and make it simple so that it's understandable. And I can take the big picture and put it all together so that it opens your eyes. And probably the most frequent comment I get from people who come to watch me is that I knew this, I knew that, I knew the next thing, but now I truly understand it because I see the interrelationships to all the pieces. So with that, the show that we're doing is called Restore the Republic. It's not an accident. I just brought out a book that's called Restoring the Republic, and it's been 57 years coming. And then right at the exact time, John comes along and offers me to do a show. So basically, that show is going to unravel for you much of what's in this book that's been 57 years in the being birthed. And it tells you what made America great, the things that we were talking about here on this show, how we systematically had it stolen from us, how through the White Hats and through Trump, we're systematically getting it back. And then it talks about what is your responsibility going forward. And we all, if we are truly citizens of America, and if we are truly citizens of a republic, we have a responsibility to take action. Action is the thing that this book calls for. It says you need to stand up and you need to do what our forefathers did. You need to be educated. You need to be informed with the truth. You need to be willing to stand up and take responsibility. And if when you go to the polls, you should vote not for who's going to give you the biggest handout, but for what truly in your heart is going to help humanity reach its potential, that's going to bring peace and prosperity to the world, that's going to give a world worth living in to your children and their children. And so that's what this is about. And for I've just queued up 16 different episodes to start this show off. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through a lot of what's in this book. But after you've watched 2 or 3 shows, I encourage you to stop and ask yourself this question. With what's coming, if we're going to be having the changes that Brad is saying by the 4th of July, do you have time to listen to Brad or to me or to John for the next year and put all the pieces together? No, you need an accelerated master course. And that's what this book is, Liberty Crusade, Restoring the Republic. That's what the channel that John has given me allows me to voice to the people. And I'm going to be going through 16 weeks of absolute just puzzle pieces, putting them together one by one, so we can truly see what made us great, how we lost it, how we get it back, and how we keep it. And that's how we basically stand up and say, I'm willing to do my part. As the government falls apart, maybe not me, I'm too old, but you can be saying to yourself, can I step into one of those positions at the local, the state, or the federal level? As the banking system falls apart, do I have knowledge that would allow me to insert myself into that? As the corporations are going to fall by the droves, and we're seeing that the CEOs are being removed, the CFOs, the CIOs, they're being removed. The corporations are changing, and it was Eisenhower, he said, is there any man, any child that doesn't understand the central cause of war in the world is lack of equity between nations? That's what Brad is saying is going to be coming. That's what we're going to be faced with, the opportunity to live. And so with that, the other thing that's happening very quickly, I just brought my own channel out just a few months ago because God said, no, you come out at the end, at the very, very end, because the message you give is going to be powerful, but it's going to be short-lived. So I have another book that I'm going to be submitting to my publisher within the next few weeks. It'll take several months to get it out, but it goes right to the heart of what Brad was talking about. And I refused to write that book for 3 solid years because I said, God, I'm already coming against all the politicians and the corporations and all the powers to be. And now you want me to come against the church and call the church nothing but dogma that has kept man from realizing their potential. So that book will be released sometime this year. And it's called Liberty Crusade because it's a series putting the power back in the Bible, and it discloses everything that Brad was talking about. We're souls. We are divine beings, and we can, with the right mindset, do anything that Christ did. He said, these things that I do, you will do in greater. So we're going to find out our true destiny, and it is not to be a slave. It is to be the masters of the world, the masters of the universe, to join God in the journey towards perfection. So that's who I am. That's what I do. I think that what I do is put the big umbrella over any issue. I'm able to step back and with the analytical skills God gave me, put the pieces together that bring those news stories together and don't look at it as a single event that's happening today, but look at it over an encompassing period of time, looking at the past, the present, and the future, and tying it together so that it all makes clear sense so that you can stand up and fulfill your role to be a child of God and help us get back this nation that we so deserve. God doesn't want us to be slaves. So anyway, my website is Larry Ballard Crusade. And I've got a QR code that will be appearing on the shows that I do with John. You can click on it. It'll take you to where you can buy my book. And if there's anybody out there who doesn't know me and maybe has skepticism as to whether they can buy that book, there's a free chapter on there. You can download and read it and see, is there any value to it? So that's me. That's what I do. And I don't have the intel that Brad has, but so my gift is strategic analysis and putting the puzzle pieces together.
God has used all of those that are willing to listen and act at this time, unbelievable time in history. And we bring our innate gifts, talents, and abilities to the table, and we put our best foot forward as soldiers of Christ on the battlefield earth.
Mhm.
And that's what we're all doing. And I thank each of you gentlemen very much. I want, like my producer, as we close out the show, put up the page, if you will, Restore the Republic, Larry Ballard at jmcbroadcasting.com. Here it is, folks. Go to jmcbroadcasting.com. It's a little skinny right now, the page, because it's just launched. You see the blue image with Larry there. That's me basically making an introduction of the page. So you want to listen to that short video. It's 3 minutes long. Underneath, you see the first contribution, Restore the Republic, Larry Ballard. It's 38 minutes, 32 seconds long. Each Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern, you will see this library grow. I'm going to use the term curriculum because Larry is very detailed. They're PowerPoint driven. These are your master classes from a historical, biblical perspective, as Larry stated, from a 50,000 foot view of where we are today. Very important. So you can, I'm sure you'll find that on Larry's Rumble channel, wherever he's going to be posting. But please do go ahead and visit that page. And of course, we publish it across all the social media platforms. To our producer, go back, if you will, please, to that screenshot of that page. And I'd like you to click on something. If we could resurface that page. Thank you. Click on Larry Ballard, either one of those symbols to the left or right of Restore the Republic. And let's see what pops up. There we go. All right, LarryBallard.com, or you can clarify that for me. But this is the website. You can go there, explore the contents that Larry has just talked about. There it all is. So let's go back to the 3 panel. I want to thank our guests. This has been a different tack that we've taken on the GFR than I typically do. I have a variety of different guests. Again, each of us serving in a different capacity. And this was very educational. As to Brad, going back to Brad's word, a master class. from each of the gentlemen on my left and right here. So thank you, Brad Wozni, for your work. I look forward to being a guest on your show.
Yeah.
Very much so. Thank you for inviting
Right.
me. And Larry, thank you for the great content you're creating. And I'm honored to post it on our platform to help bring traffic and attention to you. And I want to thank our viewers, those that follow our work. I'll run the numbers by us once because it's been a collective effort. I, like the gentleman on the screen, I've shared this before. Maybe Brad will ask me about it as a guest on his show. But basically, in 2015, 16, God made it very clear as to what I was to be doing. And I'll share that journey down the line. But what I'm getting at is this JMC broadcasting right now. We had our third-party verifiable analytics of last month. We've now reached the 14 million collective views for the broadcasts that we publish and the content we publish. Thank you. And 300,000 plus visits to our website, as well as over 250,000 collective followers from all the social platforms. I thank the audience for that. I thank you for liking, following, and sharing our content. I've got a core team of 6 with me, a total team of 10 that makes all this happen. And most importantly, these guests, the guests on my military panels, this economic show, and the various themed content that we put out, military intelligence and economic reporting. And I'll close out with a quick announcement. We are launching June or July American Media Periscope. For those that don't know me, those that follow me from those years, know. Those that don't, it was a news network I had formed years back. On American Media Periscope, we were one of the, if not the, great leading source for everything that was happening with the pandemic. Having interviewed my good friend for many years, Dr. Sherry Tempany, and all the other doctors that came in, and the scientists and physicists, pandemic film producer Mickey Willis, we spearheaded that narrative right out of the gate. And my book on Amazon was a bestseller at the time in medicine and science, Genocide Jab, Vaccines, Villains, and Victims. But why I invoke the past is to state what I'm about to do. Thank you to the audience for helping us grow. All of our guests, and myself certainly included, we seek the truth, and we bring the truth as we believe it to be, to the best of our abilities, to the public. And I think we've done a good job at doing that. And so in closing, we're going to bring healthcare now. I've got 3 people, I won't name them, that I'm bringing in, and we're going to mirror the model that we have on delivering this military intelligence and economic reporting. We're going to do the same thing now on the healthcare side. We know all the right people, and stay tuned for that, because that's very important as well. So again, I'm sorry I grandstanded my own talking points there to close us out, but I figured I'd fill in the blanks for our audience. Thank you, Brad Wozni. I look forward to being on your platform. I look forward to having you back in the global defense war. Thank you, Larry Ballard, for your tireless efforts and for the great work that you're going to be contributing to our website that I can help push out to the
John,
world.
can I make
And having
one quick
said that,
statement?
yes, please do.
I forgot to say something. I do shows like this with very few people, because what I find is that they're not capable of understanding and asking questions that lead me down the road where I can make a real contribution. John's the most unique person out there with a broad background and really knows how to do it. So when you come to my show, the one that I'm going to have for me, God told me you're to teach. So John is not going to be on with me. Nobody is. It's going to be just me, and it's a completely different format, because God says you need to teach the people how to be responsible, to stand up into leadership roles. And for that, I have to have total dedication. I use graphics. I talk very fast, but I can take you way deeper into details when I use those graphics than I can. But if you want to look to the place to come to get good interviews, it's right here with John Chambers.
Well, thank you, sir. And closing out on that comment, I'd like to feed it, is the information that Larry's going to be publishing every Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern on our site and through the platforms is for right now, for everyone right now, but it's also a record for history and for posterity. I want to thank our guests very much for joining us. I'm going to be right back with the action items for each and every one of us to consider and point you to very specific action-oriented things to help us through this financial reset that has some pain before all the glory that's coming. So thank you, gentlemen, and I'll be right back.
The currency and banking system itself is about to change. The Federal Reserve's banknote, money is debt, as in the US dollar, is about to change. We are moving into what may be a stable coin backed in part by gold and other commodities encrypted into a QFS. Do not confuse this with the central bank digital currency of which President Trump has spoken out against. Cryptocurrency, wallet, XRP and XLM, the tokenization of everything, a sovereign blockchain-based wealth system. Digital currency is the future, and the future is here.
The digital age is upon us, restoring a sound currency as opposed to the Federal Reserve's debt-based note is where we are heading. So many questions need to be answered. This is where Module 5 comes into play at wealthcoachuniversity.com. The time is now to further your education on this most important subject. Josh Reed is part of my resource network and will provide a straightforward yet high-level base of education to help you gain a better understanding of this important topic. Visit wealthcoachuniversity.com. Yes, it's time. All right, action changes things. And as I've stated before, saving America is not a spectator sport. Neither is protecting and preserving your life and your assets through this transition. And again, help is on the way for all of us with wealth repatriation. As our panel just discussed, the significant collapse of inflation down the line and taxation. And all of these things are going to give us a world of abundance, control versus scarcity, and debt slave victims. So here are your 5 action items. Number 1, go to wealthcoachuniversity.com. I produced 10 free video modules on how to get out of the system. GOOTS, G-O-O-T-S, get out of the system during this period of time. It's not as complicated as it seems. The educational videos will help you. wealthcoachuniversity.com. Number 2, Library of Truth. If you go to jmcbroadcasting.com, click on Library of Truth. And by the way, it's being transformed for more friendly, user-friendly, but it's all there. Click on the tab Economic and take a look at some deep dive documentaries and certain broadcasts by other people, not by me and my team, that will further educate you. And we also have some of these up at wealthcoachuniversity.com. Now, further action for those, this is very niche focused. If you are this close to retirement, if you are in retirement, listen up. 2 things retirees have concerns about: health, of course, and outliving their income, maintaining their lifestyle. While we have wealth repatriation and all these benefits coming, they're not here yet, and they will be dripped in my humble opinion, over a period of time. Some things may be instant. You've got to take control of these things. Brandon Clark is part of my resource network. Visit triadretire.com. It's up on my website, the links, you can see it. Brandon Clark is part of the resource network. He's a retirement planning specialist. In fact, it is so important. It's unaddressed in the podcaster world. I'm going to address it. Those in retirement that help build this nation. You're sitting there now worrying about outliving your income or alternative safe investments that have stood the test of time when markets get crazy, and they're about to. Visit Brandon Clark. Brandon and I are going to launch a 6 or 8-part series specific for you, the retiree. In the meantime, get a jump start at it, triadretire.com. Bill Armour, he'll be back next week, the Will and Bill Hour. Bill Armour, acquiring gold and silver. Talk with Bill Armour. I don't have the phone number here just yet, but JMCGenesisMetals.com will take you there. And reach out to Bill Armour, mention my name. You'll be fast-tracked for a free consultation to help you with your IRAs, 401ks, or non-IRA money to acquire both gold and silver. Believe me, It's cowboys and Indians. Not all gold and silver is created equal, and not all dealers are. Reach out to my resource, Bill Armour. That's an action item. And concluding the action items, those that have a lot going on, portfolios, brokerage accounts, cash accounts, whatever's going on, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, annuities. I used to be a financial advisor. I'm a recovering financial advisor today. Of course, left the industry in perfect standing from all regulatory bodies back in 08, 09. I know a few things. I know what goes on the other side of the curtain. And thanks to my guests and the research I do, I have my finger on the pulse of what's going on in this financial reset. If you have a lot going on and you need assistance navigating through the economic minefields that are before us right now, especially, we didn't get to cover it very much, the bond mess that's about to hit, I can help you. Not investment advice, and I don't sell any products. I'm not a financial advisor any longer, but I can help you as a wealth coach and consultant. Visit wealthcoachuniversity.com. Scroll down. There's mechanisms to sign up to meet with me private in Zoom, where I can act as your consultant and coach, walk you through it, and fast track you to my resource network who can help with those transactions. So that's pretty much the action items right now. Let's talk about, in closing, Rob Cunningham, Captain Rob Cunningham. Mark your calendars tomorrow, Thursday, April 30th, 8 p.m. Eastern. Not too late. All you got to do is sign up in the freemium portal, jmcbroadcasting.com. There's a tutorial and texted information to see if you'd like to join us for $9.99 a month. This is the cornerstone. There's our other benefits in the premium portal, but this is the cornerstone of it. Each and every month we bring a power guest in. We have Captain Rob Cunningham tomorrow and May 28th, 107. So that's pretty much a wrap. Again, pick up a copy of my book. It's a simple read. It's a roadmap. It's got the GOOTS, get out of the system model in there, the advisor scorecard arming you for what you're up against in the old school broker world. Book is good. It'll help you. It's a type of book you'll take a highlighter to and a pen, and then you'll start springing into action. So that's a wrap. Long, extended show. I expected it to be with Brad and with Larry Ballard because of their extensive knowledge. Different approach this week on the GFR, but very valuable. Saving America and protecting your wealth, again, are not spectator or sports. Requires effort and due diligence on your part and action. So it is time. Pick up a copy of the book. Utilize the resources I've just provided for you. And I'll close out with this. Chaos without clarity, problems without solutions. Steer clear from the disruptive fear porn podcasters. Follow our work, whittle it down. There are other good sources out there. Visit Resource Guide. You may find some there at jmcbroadcasting.com in addition to JMC Broadcasting. Choose wisely. Discernment is critical. That's it. Thank you very much for the extended broadcast. Thank you to my two producers for sticking around, of course, and making this all possible. Stay safe, everyone, and follow all of our programming. Our military panels, we're publishing Global Defense War, just recorded. We're publishing it Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern. An unbelievable episode you want to listen to. So thank you for following, sharing our work. Stay safe, everyone, and may God be with you.